Hey guys, Brian here from Better Chess Training, and today's topic is going to be about getting your king to safety in the opening and what to do when your opponent fails to do so. And we're going to talk a little more about the topic as we get into the game, but I'm going to be featuring a game that a friend of mine, Stacia Pugh, who has her own YouTube channel as well. You could see the link in the description below. But she played a nice game in the Cleveland Open with the white pieces, and her opponent was rated about, I believe, 1800 or 1900, makes this fundamental error of failing to get his king to safety, and she punishes it pretty efficiently. So let's take a look at the game. Starts out with e4, c6, d4, d5, and here we have the Carol Khan defense. And Stacia plays e takes d5, c takes d5, and c4, the Penov Botvinnik attack. And this is a pretty hard hitting opening against the Carol Khan, if you know what you're doing. And we'll see what happens. Knight to f6, knight to c3, e6, knight to f3, and knight to c6. Now, this is one of the ways to go. The other main line here is bishop to b4. And this, of course, leads into a lot of theory as well. But we're not going to be focusing on the opening. Knight to c6 is, also one of the main lines. I believe the third most popular way to play this. Okay, c takes d5 and knight takes d5. So here we see one of the key structures here in the Panov attack, which is this isolated d pawn. And white will use this to anchor sometimes a knight on e5, as well as conducting a kingside attack often with moves like bishop to d3, queen to e2 and e4, and things like that. Of course, black has something to say as well, so it's not always the case, but that is one of the basic ideas behind it. Okay, bishop to d3 is played, and here we have our first sort of inaccuracy. I wouldn't say it's a blunder, but here black plays bishop to d6. Now, why is this a mistake? The normal move here is bishop to e7. And you might think, well, that's not really as aggressive, but we need to look at the pawn structure here to sort of understand this. This white pawn on d4 adds a lot of dynamic potential to white's game, but can also become a target. And so one setup here for black would be castles, castles, and after rook to e1, bishop to f6, and now we're going to start to put pressure on the d4 pawn. Of course, it's about, theory would suggest that this is slightly favorable for white, but this is one of the main lines and one of black's major ways of combating this opening. But with bishop to d6, of course, that is no longer the case. So here, white castles, and here, black should castle, and that would be the normal move. But instead, he takes on c3, and b takes c3, and now queen to a5. Of course, attacking the c3 pawn. Well, it's pretty easy to defend, and here we could see that white already has a slight advantage, maybe a little more than slight. He's ahead in development with three of these pieces out. And even though black has three of these pieces, this queen is kind of out of place. Now, normally with the queen, unless you have a definite plan in mind, it's best to wait until the other pieces are developed so you can figure out where to put the queen to best use. Because sometimes here, the queen could become a target. For example, in this particular position, c4 could unveil a discovered attack against the queen at some point, not necessarily right now. And here, black makes perhaps the big mistake of the game, or the first big mistake of the game. He plays f6. And Sometimes players will make logical moves or natural moves that just don't work in the situation. But here I had a hard time trying to figure out what was black really trying to do. And so I'm thinking maybe he was thinking of doing some type of e5 break to free this bishop. But you can see here this king in the center is just going to eventually become a target, or at least make it a little bit more difficult to fulfill that plan. Instead of f6, white could have just castled. And one thing that black would have to check is to make sure that this Greek bishop sacrifice doesn't work here. And I did a little analysis, and I don't think it does. Bishop takes h7, king takes h7, and then after knight to g5 check, the king goes back to g8. And the problem here is that if we try to continue with the pattern, this black queen actually does serve a purpose and can come back to defend, and then white would just be down a piece. However, white can just maintain an edge with normal development. Let's say rook to e1. And now if, let's say a move like rook to d8, getting on the d file, now moves like knight to g5 can actually start to push some pressure without really too much risk. Okay, let's get back to the game. Instead, f6 is played, and here white punishes, or at least plays what I would think is the probably the best move in the situation, which is rook to e1, attacking the weakness right away. Queen to h5 is played. Again, not quite sure here, except that if we'll see black's next move for that reasoning. Bishop to c4 is played, adding another attacker, and now black wants to defend this, but just gets into even more trouble here. Queen to f7. Now we've got a couple pins on this pawn, and right now we could say this is winning for white, and we'll look at that in a moment. But let's go back one move here. Instead of queen to f7, black could have tried to castle and been down a pawn after bishop takes, and rook takes. Here, black is down a pawn, probably losing, but it could still maybe put up some type of defense. Rook f to d1, queen to b3, threatening here would be next. This is some analysis I did. Queen to f7, and then just doubling up here. Of course, white is in the driver's seat, but at the very least, we have, very least, he's not going to lose like he did in the game. Okay, queen to f7. And here, white plays a very logical move, but not the best move. So here, why don't you pause the video and take about a minute or two, or as many as you want, and see what you would play in this position. Okay, I hope you had a chance to try to solve it yourself. But the best move, and I found this partly in analysis with Stacia while we were looking at this game together, as well as some analysis I did on my own in preparation for this video, is the breakthrough d5. And the idea here is that with this pawn pinned, we need to find a way to attack it before black has time to consolidate and to maybe get his king to safety. So here, with this knight on c6, he can't ignore it. So a couple variations here. Knight to e5. And we can either take the knight first, knight takes e5, f takes e5, and then take on e6. And the idea here is that we just get our pieces into the game very quickly. Queen to a4 check. And here, if, say, king to f8, trying to get out of trouble, we take. And after the queen takes, we bring our rook in. And there's just a lot of trouble coming here. Even though materially it is even, just look how loose this king is. I'll put a couple more moves on the board here. Let's see. Rook to b8. And then we're going to win a7 here. If a move like b6, then we just take because the a pawn is pinned. And there's just a ton of weaknesses here. The king is loose. All of white's pieces are developed while only a couple of black's are developed, and white is just crushing here. Let's go back here. And I also looked at knight to d8, trying to defend here. And it's just as good here. Queen takes, and let's say the queen, or I'm sorry, d takes e6, and let's say the queen tries to blockade again. Then we have this nice move, knight to d4, with a ton of ideas. And we have ideas like queen to a4 check. So pretty deadly. But in any case, that was not played in the game. But I would say that what Stacia played was actually pretty strong as well, and that is queen to b3, adding more pressure here to the e6 pawn. Now, again, black's best move would have probably have been to castle here and just get out of dodge. And then at the very least, maybe black is just winning a pawn. He's going to suffer a little bit because white's development is also better, but maybe it's not totally losing. But instead, now he goes back with knight to d8, and after a few exchanges, bishop takes e6, knight takes e6. Now we have d5. And here, black finally castles, but let's just take a look and see what would happen if black doesn't castle here. Of course, I'm not quite sure with this pin here what we would do. For example, he could play something like bishop to e5 to just block the file, but then we're getting this piece back. After queen takes, knight takes e5, and let's just take a look here at queen takes b3 first. We can, of course, we could take back, and I think that would be winning. But actually, the computer finds knight to c4 check here, and after, say, king to, well, if king to f8, a takes b3, and this looks pretty deadly. But king to f7 is interesting too, with knight to d6 check. And again, we're just taking back, and we're a piece up, and that should be sufficient. But let's go back. And a lot of variations here, but just trying to show you that basically black's best chance here is to just castle, and then we get our piece back. We are now up a pawn, but we still have this pressure because of this advanced pawn and white's developed pieces, which we'll see here. Queen to e7 was played, and here we see another move that we saw just a couple minutes ago, knight to d4, and we can see the idea here, knight to f5. Well, black tries to prevent it a little bit with f5. Stacia plays queen to d5, renewing this threat. g6 is played, defending the pawn, and here was a beautiful shot, bishop to g5. Queen takes g5, e7 check, king to g6, queen takes, bishop takes f8, and here, one more final quiz for you. Take a couple minutes and try to find how Stacia put this game away. Okay, of course, there are a lot of good moves in this position, but Stacia found the best one, rook to e8. And what is the idea here? Well, the basic idea here, and I'm just going to make a move to show you here. Here, black resigned, but basically after a move like a6, there's a lot of winning moves, but the one combo I saw was rook takes c8. And of course, rook takes c8, we have queen takes b7 check, winning the rook. And basically, white will be a rook up here plus a pawn. and very reasonable for black to resign here. So, great game by my friend Stacia, and I hope you guys found it interesting too. But the main point here is that when you're playing in the opening, you want to make sure that you not only develop your pieces and try to take control of the center, which are two of our main opening principles, but the third one, which is to get your king to safety, is one that we want to make sure we're following as well. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that game. And I hope you'll check out Stacia's channel. She has a lot of chess content as well, a lot of analysis of her games and instructive material. I'm going to put a link to her channel right over here. And otherwise, I hope you guys are subscribed. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. And also, it would also help if you shared this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.